All right, hello and good evening, everyone. This is Dispersing the Fog, episode 41 for December 21st, 2025. Adam Rogers here with
Paul
Paul
Palango.
Palango. How you
We're
doing,
at
Paul?
the end of the year.
Yeah, this is going to be our last show of the year. I think, Paul, we're going to do some year in reflection topics that we've covered and
And
talk
looking forward.
and looking forward to next year for 2026. Not everybody, not every year-end podcast looks ahead as well, but we're going to do both. I realize, Paul, that all right, episode 41, we're doing this just about every week. We started February 23rd of 2025, so we've covered a lot of time this year. But before we jump into that, actually, let's just check in with each other now. How's it going? How's your week? You're all set for Christmas, and or are you
Yeah.
still keeping at it?
Oh no, we're both keeping at it and some interesting stuff. I investigating stuff, talking to people, and doing Christmas cooking
Oh
and stuff
yeah?
like that. We're getting
What,
ready for guests and
what kind of do you have any special dishes or things, the traditions that you go to?
no, we don't necessarily, but my Sharon wanted me to make my grandmother, my Sicilian grandmother's lasagna, which is a complicated thing. It's not like a slapdash, throw a layer of this on. It's very complicated using all kinds of. It took me over 3 days to put everything together, but I made like four lasagnas out of it eventually. That put in the freezer and drag them out for different occasions. But she loves it, and I've got it down pat, but I haven't done it for years. So.
All right, well, you just send me a note and see how people are liking it, and maybe I'll be down.
Yeah, I'm gonna test it. We're getting visitors starting coming tomorrow, and we're gonna test one of them out. I'll let you know how it goes.
Excellent, excellent.
And what
Um,
about you?
well, mostly just wrapping up, trying to get, people's conditions changed, release conditions changed, and things people get wanting to get sentenced and getting their cases dealt with before Christmas. But also some Christmas shopping and stuff too. Geez, Paul, I was at the liquor store a couple of days ago, and one of the workers said, "Yeah, just a few minutes before I got there, somebody, this is a sign of the times now, had walked in and grabbed two of the large Grey Goose bottles and just walked out with them right in front of staff, knowing that nobody's going to do anything. You're on video, doesn't seem to care." And the worker's like, "Really? You're just going to do?" But what a
Well,
difference,
that's interesting. I mean, there was a piece this week I may have sent you about from the U.S. where they're talking about the United States has turned into a country of fraud. That people are just think they can do anything. The rules don't work. And, they don't care about the rules anymore. It's scary because this breakdown of community. It was in Business Insider, the United States of fraud, from shoplifting to gamifying returns. America's consumers are turning into cheaters. Well, here too.
yeah.
It's been going on for years.
Well, I'm
And
hearing this more, and I think it's, people on pills or hoping to get some cash to get some pills, and there's a lot of that going on where they just don't care about the consequences. And in some cases, there isn't really much of a consequence. Uh,
And there has to be. I mean,
yeah,
it's the broken windows philosophy. If you don't deal with that, your community breaks down. You're encouraging this breakdown, and I don't want to sound like some right-wing maniac, but I think running a small business. We saw this as running a small business. It's disheartening because there's no one there to do anything, and you've got the people themselves think it's okay.
yeah.
I'm not going to get any damage from this and no consequences. It's not a good look for our country.
And of course, a bystander is the workers at the store. They're told not to do anything in all
Yeah.
cases. Compare that to the guy in Australia this week with the Bondi Beach massacre, and he just runs over and tackles the guy. Tackles the shooter in an act of extreme bravery. Could have been killed himself.
That's an
Yeah,
amazing thing. I mean, he's a Syrian, Ahmed El Ahmad. He sees a guy with a gun shooting at Jewish people. It doesn't matter about their religion or their faith. It's the right thing to do. He did it. He didn't think he was going to come back. He
yeah,
was going to make it. He ended up getting shot by the guy's father, who was
yeah,
also in on it. And he's in the hospital. He survived. His life may be changed. But I just saw a story where he got people donated $2.5 million to him for his bravery. That's not the reason you're brave, but I'm really getting tired of the cowards that live around us. The keyboard warriors who are all talk and no action. We've talked about it before. This guy was a hero.
yeah, absolutely. So, kudos to him, and yeah, his life will certainly change. But now everybody in the world knows who he is and knows what a hero he is. So it'll change in that way too.
Yeah, and it's not, religion. It's not a religious issue. You've got these doorknobs who are. It's all about, oh, I hate the Jews, I hate the Arabs, I hate this. He bridged the gap there. He saved Jewish lives because it was the right thing to do. You
Yeah.
know.
So, Paul, I
Wait,
was. Oh
before you
yeah,
go on,
yeah.
the other thing I want to just mention is this fight with Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua.
Oh yes, yeah.
You watched it, see it?
I saw enough of the highlights to get a sense of what was going on, and I was so glad to see Jake Paul get get it handed to him.
But it's, the whole thing about Jake Paul and MMA fighters, and I know, this is no insult to some of our friends here who are MMA fighters, but the thing about it is martial arts, mixed martial arts people are not the toughest guys in the world. They're entertainers, they're social media phenomena, but they're not athletes like Anthony Joshua, professional boxers. Professional boxers are the deadliest martial art, exponents. They're the ones who hit the hardest, are the most dangerous. They're in great shape. And for someone like Jake Paul to hype up something like that and go in against a guy against Anthony Joshua, he could only run for so long until he got tired. Then he ended up getting his jaw broken.
Oh man, yeah. Well, you could see in the sort of fifth and sixth round, just before, it ended in six. It was set for 8 rounds, only 8 rounds, not a real fight length anyway. And yeah, in the sixth, down he went, and yeah, he looked like he was in bad pain.
And they expanded the ring. They made the ring even bigger, so he had more room to run. You
Oh, I
know?
didn't even know that part.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
22-foot ring. It was like Olympic hockey compared to NHL hockey. Big rink. I mean, there was a letter to the New York Times about this that summed it up. It said Jake Paul is an indictment of social media and how easily the public can be brainwashed into believing bullshit.
Well, really?
Joshua is an athlete and
Yeah.
Paul is an invented character with a fan base of fools. What an embarrassment. And that sums it up.
Yeah.
People who follow this crap, not only about sports, but other things on the internet, aren't thinking, have no idea of what it takes to be a real person in what we do, what other people do, what athletes do. They're all being sold crap and they buy into it. And it comes down to what is critical thinking. That's what critical thinking is, being able to see the difference between Anthony Joshua and Jake Paul, the fraud.
Well, Anthony Joshua has done all the work for all his life to get to a
Yep.
position where he's one of the best in the world, and Jake Paul's just done it on done it on social media.
Yeah.
So, Paul, that was kind of a good segue there because I was looking back over our 40 episodes back to February and looking at what have been some of the most common topics that we've discussed. And the two that go right to the top are Wayne Gretzky and the Toronto Blue Jays. So we hit our sports every once in a while. We're not going to focus on those now. But it was interesting to look back because when we first started, it was right around the time of the federal election, and Justin Trudeau was on his way out the door as prime minister and had just issued a white paper on the future of the RCMP and how that was all going to change, and he thought there should be lots of focus on federal policing and not on contract policing. And then we've had the Nova Scotia Police Review follow on that, which kind of went the other direction, talking about the RCMP being the Nova Scotia Police Force or the choice for the Nova Scotia Police Force. So there's been lots of you know themes coming off that. RCMP harassment. We've talked about the implementation committee of the Mass Casualty Commission. Uh, the junior hockey trial, that seems like it was a while ago now too. And your book, your book had come out just as we were starting this up. So anyway, it's in a way it seems like we're just kind of getting started, but we've covered a lot of ground too.
Well, we have. I mean, even the RCMP issues. I did an interview this week with CBC in Saskatchewan over Officer Constable Kalen Henderson being charged. And we talked about this. He was charged with criminal breach of trust. He stayed in his detachment for 9 hours rather than answer a call for check the welfare of someone. The person ended up dying. And during the interview, I was told something by the reporter that I haven't read anywhere, that the officer involved, this is the second time this has happened.
To the same
That
officer, you mean?
he didn't respond to a call in the past where someone was in the woods and the body was found dead in the woods because the officer didn't go out there. He's in a detachment, Maidstone, which is, I don't know if you know Saskatchewan, but it's about halfway between Battleford, North Battleford, and Lloydminster at the Alberta border. So it's a pretty
Okay.
remote
Yeah, it
farming
would be.
community. And but this is unbelievable. We've seen this right across the country. RCMP members who are unsuitable or should be unsuitable for duty, continuing on with the job protected by the force. And in this case, the government of Saskatchewan has put their foot down and brought criminal charges. Um, but even in the interview with the CBC reporter, they seemed to have they knew no history. None of this is going on in other provinces. Nova Scotia, we had people like this in the RCMP responding during Portapic. Nothing was done. No one was held accountable. And they were shocked that, oh, this goes on elsewhere across the country.
Well, they
We
should
had
be
a lot of
watching us,
talking to do
Paul.
next year, huh?
Like, you have to provide context for these kinds of stories, I think, if you're a reporter and because it's not just a Saskatchewan issue or a community issue, it's the RCMP, which is across the country. I mean, we talk about the RCMP here in Nova Scotia, in New Brunswick, Alberta, British Columbia. We make the connections between a story in one province and behavior in another province by the same organization. It's unusual or it seems strange that they wouldn't do the same.
Well, it's one of the things we've done that I'm happy this year that, when we started out, we're trying to feel our way after our previous iteration with Jordan Bonaparte. And I think we've expanded out of Nova Scotia. We've shown the issues. We've brought people in who have been willing to sit down with us and with our audience and talk about the wider issues and provide some depth and context. I'm very proud of that. And I hope to continue that in the new year.
We've really had some great guests this year too, and including Dave Moore last week, who's got lots of views on that episode. And I think people appreciate having the guests as a feature of the show, and that's certainly something we plan to continue into 2026. Some of these will come back. We've got lots of people in mind to add to the show as guests in the future as well.
Oh,
So
absolutely. I mean, as we go through that, you can see where we're going to go. And, I'm looking forward to it. It's not difficult to get people to come on with us because there's like a bottomless well of discontented people who've been screwed by the system who deserve to have their voice heard. And, Dave Moore was an example. People that I contacted me were shocked that his restaurant was burned down
Yeah.
by an RCMP informant. Nothing was done. In fact, they tried to charge him criminally.
Yeah.
Uh, Outrageous, but that's what happens across the country inside this broken force. And you've got politicians standing behind it like they're paragons of virtue, and they're not.
No, they're not. And it's a mindset people have, there's some I don't know if it's a generational thing in some ways or what, but a faith in institutions and an assumption in a way that, all right, the police, they're all the good guys and they're all going to do things by the book and truth, justice, and the American way, the old Superman phrase, right? Well, that's not holding up as well as it used to in, I don't know, maybe in previous decades, but it's certainly not holding up now.
No,
And
it's not. I mean, there's things going on. Like in the last week, if you look at some of the stories that have broken out across Canada that point to the way we're going to be going in the future. There's a people, a shrinking landscape for transparency. Like fewer people are bothering to file access to information requests. Why? Because there are requests out there for 2 or 3 years that are not being answered. The government is defying its own legislation and not cooperating. I know of one that's been outstanding for 3 years. I know others that have been outstanding for 2 years. Nothing is getting done. We have NDAs. The story we saw on NDAs this week.
yeah,
Uh, it's crazy. Like a violinist in Vancouver had a sexual assault complaint against one of her coworkers at the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra, had to sign an NDA in exchange for $7,100 and couldn't talk about it. Then they started putting the screws to her. And she said, "No, I'm not, I'm going against this. It's all in the Globe and Mail."
yeah.
More people should be doing that because NDAs, the way I see it, when you have to sign an NDA, if the issues are so fundamental and egregious, if you break that NDA, it's all going to be revealed. Nobody's going to go after you in most cases because they don't want to get involved. That's the secret of the RCMP and the government. Don't respond. Don't say anything. Just make it go away.
Well,
And
it's true, and the theme is consistent with those access to information requests that take months and years to fulfill, and with a hot news story where the relevant org like the YVR story, right? And the RCMP has this scathing report, and they just don't respond. We won't respond for a few weeks. We won't respond, and maybe it'll just either go away or it'll die off a little bit or whatever, right? The effect of it is not as stark as it would be if it was reacted to right in the moment, right? And people understand that, right? It's the old phrase in law is justice delayed is justice denied. Well, it works in the attention economy too. If you wait and wait and wait, that attention is going to be reduced, and the effect of whatever the bad news story is going to be, reduced accordingly.
well, I first saw this, and I've said this before, when I wrote my book 2008, in 2008, Dispersing the Fog. A lot of serious things in there and observations and facts. And the RCMP commissioner at the time, William Elliott, put out a memo telling all Mounties not to engage me at any time in the media because that way they disappeared me. But you've got the media saying, well, we can't get anyone on to balance what you have to say. Therefore, we can't let you be interviewed because there's no balance. Well, it's artificial. You think the media would say we couldn't get anyone on here and we've invited them, but it doesn't happen. So my word gets, what I've written, what I've reported on behalf of not only myself but my sources gets lost because the public goes, well, we don't see him because the RCMP has effectively disappeared me until now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's media training basic says there too is like, well, if you react to the story, you're giving it oxygen and it's just going to expand, and if you ignore it, then that's a good way to keep the story from taking off. I mean, your books your books, Paul, have succeeded very nicely without a lot of reaction from the RCMP or any of the other targets,
No,
which
no
is
reaction, no reaction whatsoever.
yeah,
But the RCMP works works behind the scenes. I've talked in the past about how they make the media bend to their will. One of the things I've never talked about on this show so far, when we looked at doing courting different companies on doing a documentary over the Nova Scotia massacres.
yeah,
We had an agreement, what looked like an agreement coming together with a big company in the States, Great West Pictures, Great West Productions. And a guy out in Vancouver was working on it, and right to the end, looked like things were going smooth. We had a really great Zoom meeting with the principals of Great West, and it looked like we were moving forward. They liked my story. They liked the way I told the story. They seemed to like me against all odds. And suddenly, my agent and I got the news Great West was pulling out. Why were they pulling out? Because they have a series, a 13-year-old TV series, like Highway to Hell or something up in the Yukon.
yeah.
And they depend on the RCMP for access to the scenes and being tipped off to what was going on. So the RCMP was essentially their partner in this series, and they didn't want to jeopardize that, so they pulled the plug.
Wow. Yeah,
What does that tell you?
yeah, that's a real problem. I mean, there shouldn't be that kind of, I mean, it's a conflict of interest in a sense, but it's this consolidation of media. That's I mean, that's a small result of it. We're seeing it in the States now with
Hmm.
everybody's trying to buy different media corporations, and there's questions about whether that's concentrated at too high of a degree. But that's what can happen. They don't want
Well,
to
then
jeopardize an existing IP.
yeah, and you get the audience is basically saying, well, as long as I got a good show on Netflix, I like that Highway to Hell thing. I've been watching it for 13 years, tow trucks picking up cars. That isn't news. That isn't in the public interest. That's entertainment.
Yeah,
You know, there was a book in the late 1980s, Entertaining Ourselves to Death. Well, that's what's going on here. People are sitting there slack-jawed, being entertained by all kinds of garbage, and the world is closing in. Corporations have taken over power. Governments have abrogated their responsibilities. It's not a good situation. And, people have to step up, like Ahmed Al Ahmad. He stepped up and did something. Is anyone sitting out there going to do anything, or are they just going to sit back and continue with their knitting?
yeah, it's troubling to see, and we're seeing it at a leadership level too. I mean, what we've been talking about a lot on this show is the RCMP and the troubles with that organization. It's not the only one, but I mean, what we've heard from guest after guest is there's great work going on at ground level, at the member level. Leadership of the organization is suffering, and that's when your leadership takes you in a certain direction, then the organization tends to follow, and that filters out and it affects everybody. Um, there's a
And
real crisis in leadership.
and it's not just in the present. You have to understand the past and what happened in the past that got us to this situation. Because it's not just incidental. It's not just these people who are screwing up. There's been a culture of screw ups going back for like 30, 40 years. And good people have been driven out of the RCMP and out of their roles in the justice system, and we were being replaced by mediocre people or compromised people. And it's not a good look, it's not a good look at all.
Well, we heard that in the YVR report fallout there with Mike Webster, who seemed like an ideal person to be in policing and in intelligence and as an analyst, and but driven out by petty jealousies, it seemed like, and people that didn't appreciate his frankness or, his directness in his analysis. And they just, same with Dave Moore, right? A guy that was on top of things, doing a great investigation, digging into things that nobody else was noticing. And, all right, well, that's upsetting somebody above you, and they're just gonna, they're gonna work on it and they'll drive you out.
And the problem is when the RCMP and government does not respond, the audience will look at a Dave Moore or a Mike Webster, who we heard about from his wife, or his former wife, Moira Webster. Um, they'll say, well, there's two sides to the story. He must have done something wrong.
Yeah.
And I've checked it out. I have reliable people, who were inside the force there at the time, or had dealings with these people who say they were excellent at what they did. Claude Chapineau, who we had on from the, Ontario Provincial Police,
Mm.
York Regional Police, Ontario SIU. He said Mike Webster. He did an undercover course with Mike Webster. He was blown away by how smart the guy was. So
Yeah, and I mean, I hear from people about Mike Webster and those two names specifically, Dave Moore and Mike Webster, because they were both sort of pushing back against leadership, and paid the consequence. But people really respect them for it, and they're glad that we've had them on as guests. And people have lots of thoughts on this, Paul. I know one of the things I think we talked about this maybe a month or two ago. I think we have the capabilities to have a show where people can join us as guests, audience members. We normally we do this at 8:30 Sunday nights as a reliable time. People could come on and ask us questions or make their comments about shows that we've done or ideas they might have. And that's something we were looking at doing in the early New Year's as well. So I just invite people if they think that's a good idea, make a comment in the YouTube, feed there, or get in touch with us and let us know because I think we can handle it technically and see if we can manage it otherwise.
before we move on, I mean, one of the things that we're definitely going to be talking about next year is the outstanding um, civil lawsuit against class action against the RCMP that's it's seeking more than $1 billion in damages for a new class of RCMP victims. And one of the story that has been lost that people don't realize here, and politicians don't seem to realize or want to realize or don't want to recognize, that part of that story, the lead complainant is a former RCMP Sergeant Todd Gray.
Mm.
He's one of the lead complainants. And what happened to him, again, is interesting because he and another fellow were conducting an investigation, and they came across evidence that other Mounties were being paid off by drug cartels $60,000 or more at a time to look the other way. When they tried to investigate it, they were attacked. And that's part of the foundation of this class action suit, which is going to be explosive once it gets going. And I want to stay close to that.
It's going to be an interesting story. I was looking at some of those documents this week, and so it's a class action. You say outstanding. It's outstanding in both senses. In other words, that it is open and about to happen, and outstanding in that it's significant. It's all of. So we talked to somebody about the class action dealing with sexual harassment within the RCMP. This is for sort of all non-sexual harassment, bullying, other kind of activities. So it covers a wide range of things, and so I think
Yeah,
they're
it's
going to
not
push
just
the
women.
numbers.
It's not just women who
Yeah,
are harassed and abused. Janet Merlo made a very
Janet. Yeah.
powerful case on our show, and she could probably go on for more and tell us more, and I hope she
Mhm.
does.
Yeah.
But I'd like to get closer to this one that's going forward because it's a key time We're 6 years down the road from having the RCMP contracts up for renewal in the provinces outside of Ontario and Quebec. Those contracts should not be renewed. And if this thing moves forward, which I hope it does, we got to bring a lot of attention to it. And surely the mainstream media will do the same.
I, I, well, we'll see about that. So people maybe,
Which brings us to the other mainstream media story this week.
oh yeah. Sorry, I was just going to say before that that like to get a class action certified is not a simple process either. By the time something gets to the point where it is a class action, that means there's been affidavits filed by multiple claimants showing that they have similar stories, similar complaints of an unlawful nature, and so it's reached that point where a judge has said, yes, okay, there is something here, there is something that a significant number of people have in common, and so therefore the class action is certified. Once it's certified, then it opens up to multiple other people that may have the same or similar claims to join in. But yeah, go ahead with this week's other
Well,
story.
the other story that touches both on it's going on this week, but it touches on our future, what we'll be doing next year, is a Canadian Forces espionage case involving a warrant officer. I think it's Master Warrant Officer, what's Matthew Robar, was charged with leaking information to Ukraine, but the case is linked to a story that was in the Globe and Mail. The case is linked to a disputed claim that Post media journalist David Pugliese has ties to Russia and that he's a Russian agent, which he denies. But it seems that there's stuff going on inside of government and policing in this country that has suspicious ties to espionage, not only by the Russians, but by the Chinese, the Americans, and others. That it's really, really, there's a lot. There are other cases. The David Cameron Ordis case, which is coming up for appeal in February, I believe, in Vancouver. He's in jail right now at William Head
Right.
in Victoria. The Bill Miker case, former RCMP inspector, was charged with doing work for the Chinese to reclaim monies from criminals who are Chinese criminals who are living in Canada. His case is sort of stalled right now and it should be moving forward. They all involve allegations that seem sort of similar. Robar, Ortis, Miker, all involved in cases where they were making the people in power look bad.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
and people turn on them and turn on them in a really hard way. I'm glad you mentioned the name of the journalist there. I've seen it written. David, what is it? It looks like
Pugliese.
Pugliese. Okay. I would have said Pugless. Anyway, I've seen his name many, many times, but I read that article this week by Murray Brewster, who's been covering the armed forces for the CBC for many years. And it seems like the allegations have been very credibly denied by Pugliese. And, because they analyzed the font of the documents, the origins of them was kind of suspicious. They had very false information about Pugliese as a student, and which he's denied. On the other hand, well, I'm not sure if this adds or subtracts from the credibility of it. He was accused by former MP Chris Alexander, who was, I think he was either deputy justice or deputy defense minister at one point, ran for the conservative leadership back when Andrew Scheer won it. Speaks Russian, was stationed over there, very connected in the sort of Russian-Ukrainian world, and he's the one that brought this to the Canadian Parliament as an allegation. So that, initially made me think, well, maybe there's something to it. On the other hand, he's said some wacky things since, he's left elected office, and so who knows? But yeah,
Well,
definitely something to follow.
well, yeah. There's this curious link. We've seen it in the States, and you see it on right-wing websites. Russian espionage. and right-wing journalists have sort of a marriage made in hell in the West. And Pugliese working for a right-wing paper like the National Post papers, it sort of fits. Whether there's any fire there, we don't know. But it looks like the same kind of smoke that you've seen right across, the in the United States and on other sort of right-wing sites around the world. That the Russians sort of they have sort of a weird commonality with right-wing Western journalists.
Yeah, all seem with the aim of undermining our democratic norms and weakening us as a country and as a society, right? And opposed to Russia. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't know. We don't know what, Pugliese's denied it, but there's strange things going on in the media, and I've talked about this with you before, that strange things going on in the media in Canada that are inexplicable to me, that it makes me think, as I said earlier, security agencies are pulling the strings of some reporters, you know, in various sort of organizations. I get that sense. Can we prove it? I don't know, but it's just I get that sort of hinky feeling.
Well, we've all watched movies, right? And where it's, either the mobsters and the Godfather, like, oh, we have people in the newspapers, right? Plant this story, or it's a Bond story or something, and the spy agency feeds some information to somebody, and the story comes out, and it's such and such. I mean, you were in the media as an editor and a reporter, Paul. You ever come across somebody and you're like, boy, that source seems a little too good to be true, or a story you're like, wow, that source looks very, very official, or something, anything of that kind?
Yeah, on a number of occasions, um, first as a reporter and later as an editor at the Globe and Mail. I mean, there was a reporter at the Globe and Mail. There were a couple of reporters I was suspicious of, but one, there were sort of flat out allegations that this reporter had connections to the FBI and FBI counterintelligence, and that sort of situation didn't end up well. Of course, the reporter denied it, but strange things were happening, and other editors started to look sideways at what was going on. But it's difficult, especially in a union situation where you can't you need bulletproof evidence to go after someone, and it's very difficult to get. The FBI counterintelligence would not be showing you pay stubs. It's
No. No.
but
No.
I've seen it. I've seen it before. I've suspected it. And there's just too many strange things going on in journalism that don't make sense. And that's just aggravated by all the other problems with journalism, the lack of money, the consolidation, etc.
Yeah. Yeah, you're wondering whether, well, they have a connection to CSIS or the FBI, or else they're Spider-Man.
Yeah, yeah, it's and as for people trying to snuggle up to you and get close to you, yeah, I've had that over the years, and as I reported in I think in 22 murders. When I was doing that investigation, some pretty young girl sort of offered to help me out and learn how to do investigative journalism. And I said, no, thank you. I've seen that. I've seen that one before.
Some
It just,
undercover.
you got to be careful who you get near, and especially when people appear out of the blue who want to help you, and appealing to your vanity.
Yeah.
I looked in the mirror. I'm not that sort of attractive to any young woman, so she can learn her investigative journalism somewhere else.
Yeah. Well, then you have to split the profits and all that stuff too, right? That's
Yeah, yeah.
not good. Here, Paul, here's a question I was thinking about asking you, which was, all right, you've got a number of books there. We see them behind you. Do you all right, so do you feel like you've become a better writer with your more recent books, or like you see sometimes with a band like Pink Floyd, all right, you got this great album and then you make a few others. Or like writers seem to just get better as they get older. Do you feel like you've gotten better as a writer, or that you hit a high note at one point and it's up and down, or does it, or do you feel there is a pattern?
I think the style, because of the lack of RCMP cooperation, I was forced to use more fictional techniques in telling the story. The facts are there, but I have to tell the story and I need a narrator. And the only narrator for my stories can be me
Yeah,
because there's no back and forth with the RCMP. They will not cooperate. And that's their way of making stories go away. So when I wrote my book in 1998, The Last Guardians, I sort of started going that way
yeah.
in certain sections. I remember looking at an incident in Burnaby where I was at the scene of a head-on crash, doing a ride along with a Mountie on a Sunday night, and saying to myself, "What the hell is going on here?" And I use that in the book, sort of stepping out, the speaking directly to the audience. And then in Dispersing the Fog, I had to do much the same thing, like cover my sources. And there was no reaction from the RCMP. And I had to be careful because I talked about, my when I was doing the Meher Arar investigation, having three hard drives destroyed by hackers and a helicopter hovering in my yard a couple of times so that Sharon could see the color of the eyes of the pilot. Um, I realize I'm dealing in a dangerous situation, so I've had to adopt the way I do a story, adapt the way I do a story, the way I do the research. Traditionally, a reporter will get all their information and bombard the RCMP or the government with a whole list of questions. But I came to believe that asking those questions is not necessarily a good thing because it allows them to put up smoke screens, not answer, and they know by the questions what I'm doing.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I've adopted a whole other way of telling stories by not letting them know what I'm doing. They may be tapping my phone or in my computer or whatever, but I dare them to do something. As I said, if I think my phone's being tapped, and I've often thought that because of strange things happening, I usually say into the phone, Corporal, do you want me to spell that name? And if you use this, I can sue you for $2 million or $5 million, or the going rate seems to be $10 million.
Yeah. Yeah. Why not, right?
So I write, to finally answer your question,
Yeah.
yeah, I think I've become a better storyteller because I'm telling stories in a cinematic way. And so people are involved in get involved in the story. 22 Murders, I had people tell me they were at the fifth chapter before they realized it was real and it
Oh.
wasn't fiction.
Like it must be, and you know, you read this advice as a writer that while you're waiting for this book to get published that you've finished and all the steps that are involved in that, what do? You start working on your next one. So I know people are probably asking you, Paul, whether you working on a next book, but there's so much more to delve into. And I mean, we're in a different medium here with the podcast. I think a documentary medium would be a very good medium for, you know, Anatomy of a Cover-Up, 22 Murders in, you know, in that realm with the Portapic shootings, the Nova Scotia mass shootings. So
But we're
what are you thinking? What are you thinking next?
Well, I actually had a conversation about a week ago with my agent, and we're putting together some stuff. I told him I don't have time to do it right now, but he wants something early January, outlining what I want to do next.
Well,
And
when you're preparing 3-day lasagna meals, that's you know, going to cut into your writing time.
and I'm still making glass cats and other glass things too. So.
Yeah.
But we're looking at different things. We're still looking down the documentary road, um, and looking at ways to adapt this show. As I said, I'd like to do a writing component, maybe on Substack or whatever, because it's so
Mm.
rich. the stories are so rich, and I think putting down what people are saying in words makes it even more powerful. In writing in print makes it more powerful.
It does, and people can digest it in different ways too, and they can't, you don't have to be tied to your earbuds or to your computer. You could be reading this anywhere. But we've covered, I mean, the stories we've covered have, some broad themes to them, certainly with the RCMP and, their status within the Canadian Federation. That's been one broad theme, but you've covered that throughout your books. And
Yeah.
just, yeah, the media and the state of the Canadian media at this point. I mean, these are related stories. Um, but we sometimes weave a few themes around what we're covering.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to, the audience. We've talked about this. The audience is, they're not demanding enough. They just, as I said, amusing themselves to death and not paying attention to what the real issues are that are going to affect not only them, but their children.
Yeah.
And it's just going by, I'm all right, Jack. And, as long as I got the barbecue going and a case of beer or whatever, I don't want to know anything, and that's the people who bug me the most, the people who don't want to know anything. Um, as I said, a person close to us says, I don't read facts and then complain about other things going on in the world because they're lost in fiction. They don't know what's going on in the world. And I think we're an antidote to that. We're not here, a podcast. We're not doing a podcast to make money. We're not doing a podcast to, what do they call it? Rage farm.
No.
We're not there to make people mad. We're trying to get people to think.
Yeah. I mean, there's some of those things, and we've covered stories that have a little bit of historical context to them, the Swiss Air situation, the YVR Robert Chikansky situation, these two class actions against the RCMP. They're talking about incidents that stretch back a couple of decades, but it all comes forward like to the mass casualty, which is now 6 years now, and the themes continue, and if people don't talk about them and the public doesn't know about them, then they're just going to continue indefinitely into the future.
You know what the funny thing is, you talk about old stories in history are, I shouldn't, I'm not meaning to be catty here, but this is an example that in our previous show we did with Jordan Bonaparte, he went off, just dumped us, and he got off into, make Canada weird and things like that.
Yeah.
Uh, Seemingly innocuous stuff. But a couple of weeks ago, he went back to Canada's first school shooting, first recorded shooting in 1975 in Brampton, Ontario.
Okay.
And I didn't listen to the show. But you know what the great irony is?
What's that?
I was there.
Oh,
I was a reporter covering the first school shooting by Michael Slobodian in Brampton in 1975. If he wanted to know what happened there and have like on the ground sort of view of things, he could have just called.
well, is it fresh in your mind? What can you tell us? I'm not familiar with the story. I mean,
It was a school shooting in Brampton. I think it was June 1975.
okay.
I worked for the Hamilton Spectator. Um, we got sent out, me, Marty Tammer, and Peter Van Harten, in two cars. We drove like 30 minutes to Brampton, tracked down who the shooter was, some of the victims. We're all over the thing. And the stories we did for the Hamilton Spectator, I actually had someone call from the Globe and Mail, said we did a better job than the Toronto Star and the Globe and Mail, the three of us. It was, it was just a terrible situation. This guy walked into the school. I think he killed a teacher, a student, and wounded a number of other people. And
Well,
it's the first time I'd ever seen anything like that.
the shoot, well, and at that time too, you could have walked in any door in any school. They would have all been unlocked. Now, everything is secured and there's only one entrance and you need, all that stuff. And there's good and bad parts to that. But what a difference, Paul, like you would have. gone to the scene, talked to people, written a story, it would have appeared in the paper the next morning, and nobody would have known much about it until that paper came out.
Yeah,
Whereas now,
there'd be stuff. Yeah, that's
there's
right.
hours and hours of disinformation before anybody gets the real news.
Yeah, and you were, you tried to do the best job possible. I remember that day going to Brampton, finding the school, finding, like just basically doing your basic gumshoe work. And I'd been to other mass shootings at that time. I mean, the first story I covered for the Hamilton Spectator, my first byline was a mass shooting that I got sent to. The first day at work,
Oh yeah,
4 people shot. And
nothing. Trial by fire.
it sort of made my career by all the things that happened that day that I had to do. And then I was so inexperienced, I didn't even write the story. That my part of the story, the editor Bill Finley wrote and put my name on it. So my first byline was written by Bill Finley, the late Bill Finley, but it sort of set me on my way.
Well, it would have you that would have been a stressful situation for a new reporter to be addressing or dealing with or trying to cover. And if you handled it with any kind of steady hand, then that would have uh, that would have been known, I guess, within the organization at least.
Oh yeah, I had a really difficult situation that day. Um, where we went and tracked down the children, no, the sister of two of the victims and the daughter of the other two, and we were in the house. A reporter from who originally from Nova Scotia, Barry Conrad, and I, and at some point, he was on the phone, phoning in details of what had happened. And the sister turned to me along with her 14-year-old daughter and said, "So, how are they doing?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean, how are they doing?" And she said, "You're the police." They said, "No, no, we're not the police. We're from the Hamilton Spectator." And she said, right away, she started to collapse and said, "They're all dead, aren't they?" And I was like, and she was pleading with me for an answer. So I finally said, "No, only one's dead, Philomena, your sister," because I didn't want to tell her parents were dead too,
Yeah.
and her brother-in-law was in critical condition. But it was the whole thing was surrealistic for my first day on the job, and so I sort of handled that, and so I got sent to other mass shootings and things like that over the years.
Yeah, well, in a reporter's world, I think you seem to see. We talked about Murray Brewster before, and others. That you get on a certain beat, and once you get to know it, that's where your highest and best use is, right? Your biggest value. Uh, all right, so Paul, let's we can look ahead a little bit to 2026. We got a few things we know we can look forward to, like the Lisa Banfield book is going to be coming out. I guess we can we'll be reading that so others don't have to, and reporting on whatever the contents is supposed to be released sometime in January. I think that was the original publication date. I think late January. So we'll keep an eye out for that. The new criminal justice legislation is going to be making its way through Parliament. We talked about this in the shows the last couple of weeks. Talking, mandatory minimums are coming back, and there's going to be new laws on, well, debate on laws on coercive control and femicide, and some other changes that may be. Those changes are going to be trouble. Some other changes will be very helpful. So we'll watch those debates. And I don't think there's going to be a federal election this year. We've got some floor crossers that are giving the Liberals a majority, so they seem like they're probably going to survive the next session of Parliament at least. What else? What else do you see on the horizon as big stories?
Well, let me see here. The Magic Pumpkin.
Okay.
Last appearance for the year. I've had people wanting to buy these. This comes from a store in Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts, and they're still making them apparently.
Oh,
I'm looking into the pumpkin, and I see things are not going to get better from for the RCMP. Things are going to get a little worse, in fact, continue to go downhill. A lot of morale issues in the force. It's going to come to a head probably in a couple of months in various places as politicians get on side. And oh, and there's the Ryan Wedding case. Ryan Wedding, the drug dealer, uh,
Snowboarder.
is eventually going to be, oh, it's going to be bad. Okay, that's enough there. And thank you, Magic Pumpkin. But the Ryan Wedding case is interesting because one of our guests, Paul McNamara, when he was on, as you'll recall, said Ryan Wedding, it's a bunch. They're puffing him up to be bigger than he is. And Ryan Wedding being the former Canadian Olympian who is now considered to be this big drug dealer, Ryan and Paul McNamara said there is like probably 10 Ryan Weddings around North America. Every country has a Ryan Wedding or two.
We wonder sometimes, Paul, if they build somebody up like that, knowing that they've got away, or they kind of expect that they're going to get him, and so that they let's build them up so that when we actually capture him, it's going to look like, we're just a fantastic policing organization.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, that's right. Well, and it serves the U.S. Donald Trump's purposes right now to build up Ryan Wedding. But you notice there was a story in the Globe and Mail the other day saying Ryan Wedding, people
Not,
in the drug world saying he's not as big as they say he is.
yeah, no, that's right.
Exactly what Paul McNamara was saying on our show 2 months ago.
Yeah, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Anyway, whether they catch him or somebody else catches him first. Yeah, whether he's quite the high level as he's portrayed to be. Uh, that'll be an interesting story to see if it unfolds any differently. But yeah, the future of the RCMP. Like I don't know if in Nova Scotia that's going to change very much. We've seen some movement in the last few weeks where the premier's been, insisting, and the justice minister, that the RCMP crack down on quote unquote illegal cannabis dispensaries on First Nations reserves. They've pushed back against that. Now the premier mentioned something about how the cannabis was some laced with fentanyl. RCMP have come out and publicly said, no, we have not seen anything like that. So is there going to be the potential for a political breakdown between the RCMP and the Nova Scotia government? That's perhaps something to watch as well.
Oh yeah, I think there's going to be a breakdown in other provinces. That's what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
And that's going to come first, and Nova Scotia is going to have to take its cue from there because I think since the massacres in Nova Scotia in 2020, sense there's some sort of secret deal between the federal government and Nova Scotia government to protect the RCMP in this province.
Well, they're pushing their luck in a sense if they keep disagreeing with the premier. So we'll see how strong that unwritten at this point it would seem agreement might be. So, Paul, we're getting to the end of the show here and the end of the year. We can wish everybody a great Christmas
Well,
as we but
before we
before we
go,
go, there's some thank yous.
I want to thank all the people who've been on the show for us. They've helped turn this show into something that some people really like, and I think it's something we can build on. Beginning with Chad Jones, one
Yeah.
of our first guests, Andrew Douglas, Kurt Allen, former RCMP deputy commissioner, who's been an invaluable resource for us, Claude Chapineau, the Ontario investigator, SIU investigator, Tom Juby. What do you think of Tom
Tom
Juby?
was great. Yeah, yeah. What a lot. Yeah, what a wonderful guest and lots to say.
His
And
contributions are both Corey who killed Corey Ellison. We're still going to pursue that. Who killed Corey Ellison?
like the forensic, a really talented forensic analyst is a really valuable guest because I think people appreciate hearing, all right, what really happened and could that happen? And well, he can tell us.
And Swiss Air, his breakdown of Swiss Air in September, showing what likely happened. I know that Kurt Allen, the former deputy commissioner, was uh, in the force at the time. He said he knew nothing about this. He was blown away by
Yeah.
the evidence that Juby had.
Yeah.
Halifax law professor Wayne McKay.
Oh yeah, Wayne McKay. Yeah, always it was great to meet Wayne McKay. I had heard so much about him, and of course we anytime there's a legal story in Nova Scotia, he's the guy that they tap for his opinion, and so
Yeah.
we were glad to have him on.
Former police chief and police educator Edgar McLeod.
Yeah,
Great show.
yeah, that was a great show. Uh,
Former RCMP agent Paul Derry.
oh yeah, quite a story with Paul Derry. People are encouraged to go back. A confidential informant, and at a young age, and yeah, he's seen all the ins and outs of prison and the RCMP and everywhere else.
Paul McNamara, we've talked about, former
Yeah,
Vancouver detective, who's involved with the Bill Miker case now. Look forward to hearing from him again when that comes
we'll
up
get
in the
him
new
back.
year. Janet Merlo, former Mountie involved in the first big class action lawsuit.
Yeah.
Moira Webster, who we talked about, her husband Mike Webster, who was on recently. Moira did a great job at her first Zoom call.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. No, that's,
Kurt Petrovich, who was on twice to talk about YVR, former CBC reporter and author. Thank you, Kurt.
yeah, it's big, big name
T-
there.
Tammy Oliver McCurdy about the Portapic massacres, and the second family member we had on after Scott McLeod.
Yeah, and a different perspective too, coming from the sort of lower end of Portapic there, and they had a kind of unique experience there of kind of being ignored, and then, she had a lot of questions still outstanding, and now being on the implementation committee and some of the perspective for that.
And our last guest, Dave Moore, who's coming back for sure because there's more Dave wants to talk about, and he has more to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah, he is he's talking about somebody who's been directly targeted, and there's no other way to put it, by the RCMP and his superiors. So and not afraid to talk about it. He is this is some of the benefit of getting people that are retired, Paul, sometimes is they don't care. They'll just gonna say what they have to say because they can't be harmed anymore. They can't be fired. They don't have a job. They have other income or whatever.
And that's it. And to our audience out there, if you know anyone who you think should be on the show and you want to hear about them, or anyone who knows things and wants to come on the show, contact us. Please do contact us. We're easy to get along with.
Yeah,
And
we're pretty gentle with the guests. We don't undermine too many people too much. So, no, we're glad to have people on and help spread the word of important stories. I mean, this is what our role is.
yep.
So, Paul, I want to thank you too. You come up with a lot of the guests and always lots of interesting things to say, and you keep me entertained as well. So, I appreciate that, and want to wish you Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and rest up, and we'll get back at it.
And the same to you. I think as a lawyer, you don't get many lawyers who will do this. I can't think of any who will take on these kinds of stories and these kinds of issues. And I think the audience really appreciates what you bring to this, your knowledge, and the thing that's amazed me about you is that as we tell a story, you can tell you're a good lawyer because you quickly sort of evolve questions and stay with the story and ask the right question at the right time. And I and the audience appreciate that. Thank
Come
you, and
on,
have
Paul.
a good
Come on now.
Christmas and a good New Year's.
Please, no, no, all right. Finish your thought. Go ahead. No. No, that's
You
great,
didn't
Paul.
even
No.
pay me for that, so there.
Yeah, you get an extra royalty this week. No, it's good. I enjoy it. Hey, I'm a defense lawyer. We're here to speak for people who can't speak for themselves necessarily. So that's the job. So glad to do it, and glad to be back in 2026. Can't wait for the new year, and come back fully energized and lots more to say.
What are we looking at? Maybe January 4th or something like
Yeah, I
that?
think whatever that Sunday is, we'll be back, and with a who knows, we may have a guest. And then early on in January, I'd like to try out a night where we're just, yeah, taking calls from guests,
Sure.
inviting them onto the screen, and if people are comfortable with that, and we'll see what our audience has to say.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks again, everyone, and Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and we'll see you next time.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and thank you.
Bye bye.